where Nebo stoops low. Nebo is a deity of knowledge and learning, like Apollo and Athena. Okay, the tree of knowledge. Okay, and there's all kinds of sex cult rubbish and all kinds of behind the scenes tricks of the trade punk stuff. It has everything to do with craft and Hephaestus and Vulcan. These different deities of science in the craft. Okay, again, if you think this is confusing, know that they made it that way on purpose. This goes back to Nebo. Why is this such a pain in the ass? Because these people studied the Igbo people and tried to superimpose their people on the Igbo people, and they call that Nebo. And it's part of the confusion. We're going to see it in Jeremiah 51 shortly, that absolutely that's what's going on. There's no other way it could be. Jeremiah wrote it a lot better than the Revelation, and you don't need to kind of try so hard to figure out what they're saying in Jeremiah, but there's still some confusion there. And they'll clarify why that is. That the people who are the scribes and the scientists and the craftsmen, they wrote the Bible to be confusing on purpose, and they try to make it seem like God told them to do that. No, God didn't tell them to do that. The devil told them to do that. Okay? God said do the right thing and don't confuse anybody, right? He rewards you when you do the right thing. He doesn't want you to do the wrong thing. He doesn't want you to lead people astray. That's not how you store treasures in heaven. Okay? You know by the feeling you get. You know by the truth, by the logic mixed with the feeling that you get. It all lines up. Okay? And, you see people saying things like, oh, don't trust in yourself, trust in the Bible. Yeah, don't trust in yourself, but don't trust in the Bible either. Go the distance to make sure that you're right with logic, first and foremost, like I did in my life. I didn't start off reading the Bible. I start off with logic, and all these people who start off reading the Bible, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't know what the hell they're talking about, because they start off with the confusion that is the Bible. And it's right there explained in the Bible in Isaiah and in the Old Testament and other places, right, with the Tower of Babel, okay, Genesis, Exodus, what have you, the Tower of Babel, okay, Genesis, where it says that these people built a tower, and then God confounded their speech because they were doing something they weren't supposed to do. That's a complex way of saying that people were doing something they weren't supposed to do, and God allowed their speech to be confounded. Okay, they were trying to pretend they're important. They're trying to say, "Hey, it's my flesh that's important." They're doing things like this, and God said, "Shut the hell up," kind of thing, right? And what let me rewind. I hate them for trying to confuse us. Everyone thinks Lord was outside the divine order. Okay, what had happened is when you do something wrong, there's consequences. Okay, and when these people insisted on being idolaters, they were now talking madness instead of the truth, because they're outside the Royal African Falcon Martial Order. I mean, immediately, I knew right away when I was a kid, and most people did, basically all Americans knew right away, that the black people, something to do with black people was the divine order of God. They knew. Why? Because of Martin Luther King Day, because of Malcolm X. There's no, Ephraim Day or Jacob Day, you know what I'm saying, or Joseph Day. There's a Martin Luther King Day, and it's not a white guy from the German line. It's a black guy, okay? Malcolm X wasn't a Jew, he was black. Okay, he wasn't an Arab, he was black. He wasn't Persian, he was black. Okay, pretty straightforward. So we know right away that certain people have certain types of characteristics. The Bible says you know them by their fruit. Okay, and people are telling you when you're little, okay, you're going to be judged when you die, so be good. And then Santa Claus, right, superimposed on God and Jesus, right? They talk about Christmas as the birth of Jesus, right? And it says be good for goodness sake. So you're supposed to be good. So people who aren't being good, people who are being what appears to be lukewarm or obviously evil, could not possibly be the way to God, to be the natural leaders of society. Okay? I don't think it's a coincidence they're causing me to stumble on my speech as I say that, which overkills that I'm right. All right. Where are we here? Okay. So it says, when he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like the smoke from a gigantic furnace. In Isaiah 31:7. So let's go over this real quickly. Return, you Israelites, to the one you have so greatly revolted against. For in that day every one of you will reject the idols of silver and gold your sinful hands have made. Assyria will fall by no human sword, a sword not of mortals will devour them. They will flee before the sword, and their young men will be put to forced labor. Their stronghold will fall because of terror. At the sight of the battle standards, their commanders will panic, declares the Lord, whose fire is in Zion, whose furnace is in Jerusalem. See, so they're fleeing from my arguments. Remember, the word is God. What is the word? It's speech. It's action-based speech, okay? and that can include actual speech. So when I say, hey, in the name of the spirit of the white Jew and LGBT community, excuse me, when I say to the LGBT community, the whites and the Jews, in the name of your spirits, present your viable counterargument or accept that I'm God's son, and they don't respond, and they're watching me with many witnesses. Now, I got 22 witnesses. How many people think are watching me and harassing me if I got 22 witnesses to large groups of people watching me and harassing me? And I say to them over and over again, then what has happened? Isaiah was right when he prophesied about these hypocrites. He said, Assyria will fall by no human sword. A sword not of mortals will devour them. They will flee, they will flee, they will flee before the sword of the actions of the top martial arts, the sword of God. And their young men will be put to forced labor. So my actions, I'm not talking about Bruce Lee here. I'm talking about me, monotheistic, not agnostic, not movie star. Actual, no one could beat me in single combat, hand-to-hand combat with weapons. No one could beat me in sparring. Actual top martial arts. Okay? And it says their young men will be put to forced labor. And Jesus says, as the character in the story, he says that whoever sins is a slave to sin. So their young men will be slaves to sin, and they'll be pitiful, right? Jeremiah 50 says they'll be weaklings. They'll go mad with terror. Okay? They'll be spiritually plundered. They'll be useless kind of sacks of filth walking around without the Spirit. What is a human without the Spirit, without the highest cause? Just a sack of filth, just a narcissistic kind of feeling-led piece of crap. It says their stronghold will fall because of terror. Because of what? You hear the war on terror, right? Because of terror, because they're terrified. When I said to them, virtue means man, be a man and stand with me. They're like, no, I'm scared. You see what I'm saying? They're terrified at the battle standard. It's not a coincidence, it's called standard. Because that's the standard. What is the standard of God? It says in virtue means man. David's charge of Solomon, be a man and obey God. And they're fleeing, afraid to do what's right. Then it says, declares the Lord, whose fire is in Zion, whose furnace is in Jerusalem. Okay, this is a good thing to write down if you're taking notes here. Isaiah 31, verse 9. Their stronghold will fall because of terror at the sight of the battle standard. Their commanders will panic, declares the Lord, whose fire is in Zion, whose furnace is in Jerusalem. Again, Zechariah 12 shows us that the war spirit of the idea that Judah is superimposed on has the fire in them. The idea here is something more pure than what the spirit of the flesh-based tribe is. And out of the smoke, locusts came down on the earth, and they were given power like that of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or any tree, but only those who did not have the seal of God on their forehead. They were not allowed to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months, and the agony they suffered was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes. You see how they're practicing God's plan in reverse, like Satanists brag about, where they're persecuting me and not these people. But it's not that simple. 1 million people died in the pandemic, okay, and I'm still here, okay? So it's not that simple. They're killing and causing to suffer mostly people, by far. I mean, I'm the only one doing God's work to a T. Basically, people are suffering by far are people who do what they say. And that goes back to Jerusalem, right? It's Judeo-Christian culture. Why does Judeo come first, right? It's like Amen Ra. When they worshipped Amen and they tried to, put him before Ra, they put Amen Ra. So Judeo-Christian, right? Afro-Asiatic, right? The black comes before the Asiatic, and the Asiatic is referring to the Semitic, right? The Middle Asia, the Near East, right? Babylon, right? The Mesopotamian area, not China, and so on and so forth. So it's saying Hebrew is an African first, then Semitic language, okay? The Jews were trained by, Moses was trained by the Egyptians, not the Semites, okay? And, in the African tradition. And Nimrod, an African, Ham begot Cush, Cush begot Nimrod, founded Babylon, not a Semite. So it's African first, right? Before Abraham, Nimrod was a mighty warrior for the Lord. It's African first, okay? And John the Baptist says of Jesus, he was before me, so he's greater than me. And that's referring to the war spirit that he's in, okay? And his soul, and so on and so forth. And out of the smoke, okay, I went over that. Okay. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any plant or tree, but only those people who did not have the seal of God on their forehead. So they're not supposed to persecute me, they're not supposed to fuel me, they're not supposed to, you see what I'm saying? They're just some kind of worms that like to pretend that they're chosen, and they refuse to do what's right. So they're not following the scripture, they're not following God's commands. It's obvious, I'm sure we all know this. That's why they're established in all these corrupt, developed nations in the world. You know them by their works and who allows them and why, and so on and so forth. Okay. They were not allowed to kill them, but only to torture them for 5 months, and the agony they suffer was like that of the sting of a scorpion when it strikes. During those days, people will seek death, but will not find it. They will long to die, but death will elude them. The locusts looked like horses prepared for battle. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth was like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They had tails with stingers like scorpions, and in their tails they had power to torment people for 5 months. They had as king over them the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek is Apollyon, and whose equivalent is Nebo. Okay, Apollo, Abaddon, right? Apollyon, the destroyer. How's he destroying? With technology. Okay, transhumanism. Once you use technology, things will never be the same. So the main aspect of the devil that is destroying things, okay, is Apollo. When we look at it in terms of technology, what gave the white man and the synagogue of Satan the power to colonize the world? It was technology. So the more they kind of grasped that and pushed for that, the more they were able to spread their satanic ways and so on and so forth. All right. The first woe is past, 2 other woes are yet to come. So now, let's just shoot through the other trumpets real quickly, and we'll get into Jeremiah 51 so we can explain this a lot better. Okay? If you have any questions, put in the comments. I'm going to have to keep going. Some might think, oh, do this again and again. They fuel me every time, and then a kind of video slips through. If I took it at the pace of, if I took it slower, nothing would get done. So I'm just going to keep going. Okay, if you have any questions, put in the comments. All right, very little would get done, so I'm going to keep going. Okay. The 6th angel opens the abyss, and 200 million troops from the Babylon Euphrates River with fiery red, yellow, and dark blue breastplates come, and demons gather, sniveling cowards against God for Armageddon, and they ambush themselves. Okay. 7th angel, prayers go up. Angel takes censers filled with fire and hurls it to the earth. Peals of thunder, flashes of lightning, and a great earthquake and occurs, and the city of the world are utterly spiritually destroyed permanently. They collapse. Luke 11:18. I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. I have given you authority to trample snakes and scorpions and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. Okay, so if you don't understand this, don't worry about it. We'll get to this later. I just wanted to show you how it ends real quick, right? The next angel, the 6th angel, is going to open the abyss, and troops come forward, and they, spiritually speaking, they gather around to face me, and they're in the flesh, the vessels of the people, and then they're in the ways and the things that they're doing, right? Part of why the white man is so, sensitive to, when it comes to, the ethos or the atmosphere of and the climate, the social, political, and economic climate of things, because because they worship the devil, okay? And they spread that devil philosophy to the rest of the world. Again, it's not the same as racism. I'm part white, my mom's white, and my mom's blameless. It's white people's culture was the main culture of evil that took over the planet. If you don't know this, you're insane. If you think it's racist to point that out, it's like saying a lot of black people have curly hair. It just is what it is, Again, in Luke 11, it says, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven, and that's connected to the lightning that occurs when the 7th angel, blows his trumpet, right? Prayers had gone up. The angel takes a censer, fills it with fire, and hurls it to the earth. Peals of thunder, flashes of lightning, and a great earthquake, and the cities of the world are utterly spiritually destroyed permanently. They collapse. Why? It has to do with the water being the spirit of the water has to do with war spirits, has to do with a living spirit, has to do with life, has to do with righteousness or wickedness. There's water of adversity. There's water of God. There's water of wickedness. There's water of righteousness, right? So when the water is contaminated, what is happening here is it's announcing that the water is contaminated by the actions of God, and that people are destroying themselves. A bunch of demons are destroying themselves, kind of like in Norse mythology, where they say Valhalla is a place where warriors fight each other, all day, and when the sun goes down or something, when the sun comes up, they stop or something, then they start over again or whatever, right? It's something that goes on forever, and they're filled with satanic, and pagan and spirits.